Hello and welcome back to the Cardiff Central podcast. It was a bit of a slog, but the Blue and Blacks battled past Connacht on Saturday night in a game where even the TMO didn't want to return for the second half. We'll look back on that. There's news of actual centres, and we'll preview this Friday's derby against the Dragons, plus the major story of the week as Hollywood comes to the Arms Park. Joining me on the podcast this week, we've got Fraser Stroud. Fraser, how are you?
Yeah, good. Relieved after the weekend, but yeah, feeling good.
Good stuff. Steve Coombs, Steve, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm tentatively excited.
And we got Tony Esposito. Tony, how are you?
I am delighted.
Good stuff. Right, we shall start on Saturday night at the Arms Park. Then Cardiff beat Connacht 14-8, finally beating them this calendar year. The game started with a Castleford penalty, but Tom Bowen hit back for another on a try-scoring tally of his after 15 minutes. Then was a long and arduous defensive and aerial battle before Bowen finally scored again from an interception on the 77th minute to make the game safe. O'Connor scored a consolation for Connacht right to the death to take a losing bonus point home in a game that I don't think many will remember for a long time. A couple of three-word thoughts, which I think sum up a little bit what sort of game it was. Gareth says defence won game. RJ says defence and discipline. Ben says proper arm wrestle. Paul take the win. Joe and Reese both said never in doubt, with a strong hint of sarcasm, I suggest. Nathan said that will do, and Tom and John both said wins a win. Fraser, coming to you first, general thoughts on the game?
Well, it was quite a hard watch, I'd say. Like I felt I was well, a second half, I was just like, I think I just thought we were going to lose. It was just the inevitable last 10 minutes, concede a try, we've lost. I just had in my head that that was just definitely going to happen. So obviously delighted that we won. That like intercept, yeah, Bowen running away and getting that try was such a relief. So it was worth it, I guess, in the end. But yeah, I think to echo the three-word thoughts, I think the defense was, yeah, unbelievable throughout. I think the defensive reads in midfield in particular were really impressive, just like cutting out their attack. Obviously, that's what's resulted in the Tom Bowen try, but I think there was a couple of other times where it was just shut down any space they could have had. And I think it's great to have that consistently throughout the game. That's really impressive to have that resilience in the face of like quite a lot of possession they had, especially again in the second half. Our back three was excellent. I think in the air, be fair, a bit of a mixed game, but I think overall they really showed up. Beefham likes to tackle, which is good. He was like putting in hits left, right, and centre. It was really impressive. When it was excellent. Does what Bowen does. Is again amazing. It's kind of like you're gonna say the same things about him every week, which is, I mean, brilliant. But and yeah, I thought our breakdown work was great as well. We were really disruptive, both like forwards and backs. It was like an all court game. You know, you had the Dan Thomas, McNally in the disrupting the breakdown, but also there was a couple of turnovers from our back three. And the one oh, and also our scrum was excellent. We had genuinely had the upper hand in the scrum, which is rare, I think. So I was really impressed by that. And then obviously the only big caveat I think is we'll touch upon is obviously Teddy getting a fairly serious injury, and I think we'll talk about why the attack didn't fire and that kind of stuff. And I'm worried how integral he might be to that because he's kind of like that forward playmaker, and I feel like he kind of dictates it to a certain degree. So yeah, we'll see how that comes out. But overall, just like delighted we got the win. We beat Connacht finally. We can just like monkey off our back. It's yeah, brilliant. Just very happy about it.
Steve, your thoughts?
Um, I mean, I got to the game late. I missed the first 20 minutes, and for a long time there, I thought, "Holy shit, am I not going to see a single point tonight?" It was a proper stalemate for most of like the middle part of that game. And to be honest, I was thinking, oh Christ, the Hollywood guys are here tonight, and I hope they realize we don't just kick the leather off the ball every week. But I mean, after the game, I felt pretty pleased because I think, as a lot of people have already said, we probably lose that game last year. I think we've seen the benefit of putting a bit more work in defence through that game. It was a defensively orientated game, and I think the truth is, although we all like the sexy rugby, you over the course of a league campaign, you need to win games like that. So much as I would have liked to watch us absolutely pummel Connacht into submission, incidentally, I'm a little disappointed that Stuart Lancaster has already turned Connacht into like a really boring version of Leinster, if that's even possible to be more boring than Leinster. But yeah, I'm glad we got the win, and I think it does show progress because we would have lost it last year, I think.
Tony?
Um, what Steve finished on there is exactly right. I think I mentioned to you guys and a couple of other people that last year we lose that. We concede a penalty and score and concede a try in the last couple of minutes and lose it by a couple of points. The year before, I think we lose it with Connacht going away when our attack didn't fire. The fact that we were able to defensively nullify what is essentially a pragmatic Connacht is such a shift, especially as it felt defensively. On Saturday, we tried to be more aggressive at breakdown turnovers, whereas I think against Munster and the Lions, forgive me if I'm wrong, it felt like we were a bit more passive. We weren't going so much for the turnovers. We were obviously still winning turnovers with Cardiff, but it felt like we tried to attack them a bit more because we knew they were just going to try and slowly work through and go from there. Yeah, getting that monkey off your back though, like we looked like a team that had lost five times in a row to Connacht, and it's just one of those things of by hook or by crook you get over the line and and then it's gone. Now you get rid of that result and you move on, shift on.
A couple more three-word thoughts. Rob said no cutting edge. Dave said lack of penetration. The attacking stat line was that Cardiff made 142 carries, only 6 line breaks, coughed up possession 22 times, and made 42 kicks out of hand. Fraser, you mentioned the attack didn't fire. Why do we think that the attack just didn't get going on the night?
I do think, and I said I was making notes throughout the game, and I think when I saw Teddy going off at 30 odd minutes, I immediately was like that could affect things because I feel like, I mean, especially in the Lions game, I think he set up almost he was involved so integrally in almost every good attack we had because he makes those decisions as to whether pop it out the back, run forward. He just seems to be that kind of second playmaker. I know you usually have a 10 and a 12 doing second playmaker, but it feels this season in particular, Teddy seems to act as that. Give it to me and I'll decide whether it goes back to Sheedy or we go through the forwards or a pop pass. He just seemed to, he's got that skill set that's like, you don't really get many forwards with that range of skills. So I really do think him coming off, and obviously he didn't have a bad game, but he is not Teddy Williams and he doesn't have that skill set. And I feel like it was quite massively disruptive. And I think we just kind of started stuttering. Our fluency wasn't there. We kind of making not poor decisions, but kind of just doing the same thing or not like making the sharp choice in the moment. And then obviously kicking quite a lot because we weren't going anywhere. So I do think, for me anyway, it felt like the Teddy coming off was the real change in the game where our attack kind of just like faltered and we didn't really get it up again. But our defense, and we stuck with it. So fair play to us to adapt into that. And hopefully next week we'll have a bit more time to play with someone not Teddy there, and someone else will be able to step up. I'm not sure who that is, but we might be able to adapt our gameplay. But that's where I think it was the big change and why our attack didn't quite have the punch it usually does.
And I think that's the key point. One, it was an injury to a key player that gets us go forward ball in a couple of different ways. Two, we had a couple of things like that break by Sheedy where he's just offloaded it to Bowen and it's not gone to hand. There were a couple of other bits, and Connacht were stifling as well. Like we shouldn't discount that. And I think, like we've mentioned already, the 5 times in a row that they've beaten us, it's very easy to get in your head, no, here we go again. And that's, to me, we looked like a team that was thinking, no, here we go again. So and all those factors are built into exactly what you're saying. Like it's one of those things that I just think you you don't even look at the tape. You just go, let's just move on.
Yeah, I think like just to mention two other factors. That was a very physical, attritional game. Connacht
Yeah.
had the week off, whereas we had a very physical, attritional game against Munster previous week. We had walking wounded coming in, a few players dropping out. They're coming in like you could say perhaps they're a little undercooked, but they're also essentially fresh after pre-season, and I think that actually worked in their favour because of the nature of the game. The other thing is the back line. You've got Stefan Manuel making his first start as a 19-year-old. There's another 19-year-old in the back line, but that doesn't really count because he's brilliant. Beetham's on the other wing. I know there's a whole debate about where Beetham can play, but I don't think he is a natural winger. So that is not quite a makeshift backline, but it's certainly, I would say, significantly under strength. And I think it's actually a good sign that none of us are moaning about that, because I think in previous seasons, like we miss a couple of players and say, oh, if only Willis was playing, if only like such and such. No one's saying that. And I think that in itself is a good sign for where we're going.
I went on the pitch afterwards. I took my boy, and he was buzzing, running around getting signatures. And I saw Harry Millard, and I went, "Oh, I'm amazed you managed to play. You look like you were limping off both legs and had a broken back when you came off against Munster. You must be like Lazarus." And he laughed and he went, "It was close." Like so, like the fact he's managed to get through as much as he did. Because when you mentioned those 19-year-olds, we had Darwin Lewis to come off the bench. Like it's. Because I saw comments when we made those shifting up like about those two centres that we signed, and people going, "Oh, well, why aren't they promoting through the academy? And isn't that what the SRC's for?" And I almost got engaged, and I stopped myself because I wanted to point out we had Emmanuel at 12, we've got Bowen, Beetham, Winnett, Darwin Lewis in that 23 of just in the backs. Like it's just like. Which is why I didn't get involved. I would just find myself arguing with people who yeah.
The reality is, like, not to put too fine a point on it, but if you go through all the teams in Europe, you are not going to find many that are more reliant on their academy than Cardiff. And yeah, I was amazed that Millard played because he didn't break anything, but he was clearly in a lot of pain. There was a thing before the game saying that they were worried he had organ damage. Which I'm apparently he didn't have organ damage and was able to play. But I mean, my guess is because of the way he landed, he must, as a minimum, have severe bruising on his back, and he played with that pain. He's a tough motherfucker.
You might want to time code that one because Lee will have to edit that little swear out.
I think I would just add from the attacking game. As much as the back line was smooth and stuff, I did feel like it lacked a little bit of punch. I think we missed like a Ben Thomas in there, like a real direct threat. I think the other person we really missed in attack was actually Alex Mann. Ben Donald did a great job at blindside, but Mann has developed this sort of innate ability, like Ray Lilo-esque almost, to like beat the first man every time he gets the ball with a bit of footwork and then follows that up with a bit of punch as well. And it felt like, particularly in that first part of the second half, we were just going side to side a lot and ended up looking to make miracle offloads or miracle chip throughs where we weren't quite breaking down Connacht. But overall, can't complain with a win at the end of the day. Rob's three-word thought was that it secured a turgid victory. Steve, you mentioned about we would have lost that game last season. We've been treated to a lot of very good rugby at Cardiff over the last 2 years, but is there an acceptance that if we're going to make it to playoffs, we're going to have to grind out results like this on occasion?
Yeah, I think that's the reality. I mean, if you look at games in the URC over the past weekend, I think we've improved and we're in a pretty good place. But there are a lot of good teams in this league. That's the reality. I mean, I'm critical of the URC in numerous ways, but the quality of the teams in it, it's going to be tight. I mean, Edinburgh look strong and look physical. I thought there's a lot of criticism of the Scarlets after last Friday night, but I thought the Stormers was an absolutely remarkable team. There's a lot of good teams in this league, and there's a lot of physical teams, and games like that are going to happen where you have to dog it out.
We've mentioned Teddy Williams briefly earlier. It appeared to us watching it that it was some kind of fracture dislocation as he landed from a line out in the first half. How he manages to sort of stay in the maul and then hop off. I think you'd have heard my screams from across the ground if that had happened to me. But Cornel Van Zyl said after the game he's gone to hospital. He's set for a significant time out. You would imagine potentially the rest of the season. Tony, I don't know if it's possible to sort of really sum up just how big of a loss he is, but also how do Cardiff go about trying to fill that gap as well?
On the second bit, I've no idea. But on the first bit, it's telling, like, you could probably go back until the start of last season. But I think from then, every time we picked a team sheet, we've inked in McNally and Teddy. Like, that's how important those two have been, that partnership. So it'll be really key on McNally to sort of bring on whoever gets to play alongside him, whether we see Seven Story Rory or we're probably going to go Mulverhill on the weekend and pick Knott against the Dragons. So, but forming a bond, because that's one of the key things. Teddy and McNally look like they've been playing together for years. Like they just seem to be able to know where the other one's going to be, and it's become such a great partnership in such a short space of time.
Yeah, I suppose Ben Donald's the other person who might come into that equation a bit more then as well, out of necessity more than anything, because we do only have sort of 3 fit senior locks there. Having obviously it's early days for Tom Cottle at the Rags, but I don't look at him as somebody who is definitely ready to step up yet after his performances early in the season. I think he needs like a good run at that level before we'll consider him. I think the other thing that Cardiff will have to consider is that there isn't a massive market for like loan signings of locks at the moment. You look at
Because the Scarlets
I
are
was going to
taking
say the Scarlets are taking everybody, but they're struggling to find lads, and we've managed to pick up 2 centres as we'll discuss a bit later, but there's not going to be teams that are readily letting locks go out. I don't think at a massive rate. Steve.
Yeah, I think. I mean, we'll talk about the centre loan signings later, but in the article, the Wales Online article, it mentioned that we were already looking at Currie Cup for centres, and I think we are going to need some kind of second row signing, because even if Teddy wasn't out for a significant length of time, I don't think it's even humane to ask Josh McNally to play every single week. I think he was absolutely exhausted by the end of last season. That was clear. I think other than the 10 minutes he was in the bin at Munster, he's played every single minute this season, and I just don't think it's sustainable. I think he's fantastic, but it's not fair on him to ask him to just do that role every week, such an attritional position. So I'm hoping that whatever links we've got with Currie Cup, perhaps through Van Zyl, we're able to dig up a decent second row or two.
McNally's going to have time away with a RAF as well at some point, isn't he? Dan?
Well, yeah, you'll have time away in order to play
rugby. Yeah, exactly.
The army.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
yeah, we're going to have to cover him at some point. I don't know when they're usually towards the back end of the season, but almost certainly they'll fall on the weekend we're in South Africa again or something as well, just because that seems to be the way it works. Fraser moving into the outside backs. Obviously, Tom Bowen earned a deserved man of the match for his 2-try effort, but I think a lot of praise was reserved for Cam Winnett as well for his performance under the high ball. I wrote on the question list, does he deserve a Wales recall? Of course, he was in the squad for Japan in the summer, but just didn't get on the pitch at all. Mm-hmm. Is he somebody who is more in line to play a bit in this autumn internationals? Do you think his performances are worthy of that?
I think he's definitely. I think he's definitely grown since he first got his call up. Obviously, I think I was a bit early for anyone to like start playing for Wales. Really, he was like barely had any games with Cardiff, and obviously it was a little bit of a dip in him adjusting maybe to the reality of like him not being in the Wales squad every time. But I think he's definitely maturing. I think as a player, I think he seems to have a good communication with the other players as well. I think he's developing that and seems to like have this assertiveness and confidence that again comes with playing games and playing well, and he's playing well. He's got a lovely touch about him. He's a classy player. he's great and he's like improving in aerially because that's been like an issue in the past. I think he was really good on the weekend. He's brave in the air, even if it doesn't come off all the time. He doesn't collect the ball. He's always competing properly. Which I admire. Like doing that is fucking scary. I wouldn't be able to do that. So I respect that massively. I think in terms of Wales, obviously you got Blair Murray. I guess would be the first choice fullback. I don't know for Wales at the moment, and he's obviously a hard player. Like Blair Murray's pretty exceptional, and when it's kind of only plays fullback, so I guess that limits where he might come into the Wales team. But I think he should. I think he's definitely earned enough to be in the squad and to be on a bench or something like that. And I could see him getting some game time over the autumn if he keeps this up and doesn't get injured. Because he is a classy player, and he's got time on the ball and a good skill set. So yeah, I could see him back in the Wales squad. I think it would be deserved.
I think Blair Murray might, not for his playing, but that haircut that he displayed on Friday night against
Jumped in there
Stormers.
before I could do it. He deserves to be punished for whatever he's got inside his mind, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know what's going on with that haircut.
It's a one international window ban for poor haircut.
Yeah, I was wondering, does he wear that day in day out, or is that like a game day haircut? Like that's fucking mad.
Either way, it's too much. Whichever the answer is to that. Steve, you mentioned earlier about the homegrown players. I think just to go through the back line in particular, outside of 9, we started with Sheedy, Emmanuel Millard, Bowen, Beetham, Winnett, and then brought on Johan Lloyd and Oshan Darwin-Lewis, a back line that is all either academy products or homegrown players and covers the sort of length and breadth of the pathway as well. The Cardiff lads like Sheedy and Lloyd and Darwin-Lewis up to Steph Emmanuel, Llantrick Vardra way, and then your Cynon Valley guys, Millard, Bowen, and Beetham as a South Powys lad. It can sometimes, I think it can be framed as, oh well, you're just using kids for the sake of it. But these are genuinely good players. How pleased will somebody like Griff Rhys be to see these guys coming through and really making their mark on the team?
Well, I mean, he'll be delighted, and it's testament to the fantastic job he's done. And I mean, the other thing is, I'm pretty sure all the players mentioned there played for the Rags. So I think it's testament to that system. I mean, we're doing things slightly different at Cardiff by focusing on basically our second team, our traditional second team, for bringing players into senior rugby. And I think you have to say it's working. I mean, Tombo and Steph Emmanuel have basically played a full season with the Rags, and they've slotted straight in to the first team. I still think it's remarkable that to have two 19-year-olds in the starting team, and not only are they there, I've at no point have I doubted that they're not able to, slot in and handle anything thrown at them. So yeah, the academy system is working and flourishing, and it would be a terrible shame to go and wreck it, Dave Reddin.
Nudge, nudge. And then just to finish off Saturday's game, Tony, talk to us about the North Terrace.
Oh, the speakers over there are awful, aren't they? Like, there was that TMO break at the start of the second half, and I had no idea what was going on because the speakers were horrendous. I am pleased I was over there though, because I did see Martin Ryan and his Hollywood chaps. They quickly got scared away when a student let off one of those fart bomb things, and everyone scarpered, and they seemed to disappear into a box. But yeah, it was really good. I had my boys got a season ticket for the first time this year. So, but a load of his mates were there for someone's birthday, so we disappeared over onto the north. It was an interesting thing. I don't think. Sorry, Steve.
How costly that fart bomb could have been.
Wow. Yeah. It was yeah. I swear the concrete's different over on the north. It affects your feet more. Yeah. Before we move on from the Connacht game though.
The tinfoil hat
The
is
hat's back. So if you look at I'm just going to talk about Tom Bowen's tries. If you look at Tom Bowen's try when Sheedy was on, the cross kick, it's beautiful cross kick. He catches the ball, he steps inside, and then he veers back out a little bit, so he's further away. Sheedy did make the kick, but for the second try, where Sheedy's not on the pitch and Johan Lloyd is on the pitch, where does he score? right under the posts. I'm not saying that it's a conspiracy, but the facts are the facts, guys.
It's true.
Anyway,
For
That's
people who are listening and not watching this on YouTube, it's amazing the work that Tony's put into making that hat.
I mean,
It's,
my wife has laughed at me so many times. So have my kids. Like, what is that? Why is that there? So yeah.
Well, that was Tony's tinfoil hat corner for this week. Oh, I may come out later again. I'm sure there'll be something. There'll be something that'll
There'll
come
probably
out.
be something on the rag
can
side,
I
I
have a
guess.
Met Office corner?
I mean,
That's
Steve, I am
banned.
forcing it in. Like, I'm making it my corner.
And just one last note from me about congratulations to the guy who stood behind us on the South Terrace, who had Tom Bowen first and second try scorer a pound on at 50-1, who was absolutely gutted when he spilled that chance in the first half, but I'm sure delighted about an hour and a half later when he finally did score the second try of the game,
Hang
the
on,
longest bet wait ever.
did one of those guys have like a bit of a mullet?
Oh, he was stood behind, so I was only
Oh,
listening, like
okay, right.
earwigging rather than actually
Yeah,
seeing it.
I think you were probably just a couple of rows in front of me then. Yeah.
He was absolutely gutted when that one went to the ground, and yeah, the long. I don't think many people will have to wait that long for a first and second try scorer bet to
There
come
was
in.
an hour between points.
It was
So,
mad, wasn't it?
so from 7-3 to when we scored, or when Bowen scored the second try, there was an hour.
Yeah.
It was a long old evening.
Yeah, it
Like
was.
somebody said, after, because of that TMO delay as well at the start of the second half. I think I just randomly heard somebody shout, "Fucking hell! It's 9:45 or something like that." With like a couple of minutes still to go. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a long old evening. As we have discussed a few times, evening kickoffs are not great anyway. So when the game drags on for so long, it definitely doesn't help in that regard.
I had, so sorry, as we're talking about gambling, I had a fiver on Tom Bowen to score the first try in Cardiff to win by between 11 and 20 points. And I got 20-1 on that, so you can tell how pissed off I was when Cardiff scored.
Yeah, I was going to say that was an absolute killer at the end there. Steve, the only one who was still really invested in
Oh,
Queen Connacht
Yeah.
then.
On the kickoff time though, we had didn't we have the highest attendance of all the three home games this weekend of the Welsh teams? We had about 7,000, and I think Scarlett's reported it as 6,114 because I saw Lance Bradley trying to take the mick out of them by saying they had 6,115. But I don't know what they had at the Brewery Field, but I doubt it was any more than what we had. So even a 7:45 kickoff on a Saturday night to get
the biggest club in
7,000.
Wales.
Yeah, exactly. Like even with the WIU trying to hold us down by giving us rubbish kickoff times.
Put your hat
Tinfoil
on. Put
hat's
your
coming
hat on.
back.
Yeah.
Right, that's that one done then. We'll move on to some news. First piece of news is that, like buses, you wait for ages for centres to come in at Cardiff, and then two arrive at once. Cardiff announced that Will Rigg, ex-Cardiff Met and Coventry centre, now at Exeter, and Oshan Roberts, ex-Cardiff schoolboy, went up to Kirkham School and signed for Sale, play for Wales under-20s over the summer as well, have both joined on short-term loans. They trained for the first time on Thursday. They were both travelling reserves at the game on Saturday. We'll get on to whether they might be involved on the weekend in the team selection later, but good to have some reinforcements come into the midfield. And then the major news of the week broke on Monday afternoon. Steph Thomas and Wales Online doing an interview with a potential buyer for the club, a consortium that includes a number of Hollywood production people. Gareth West is a producer who's worked on films such as Ferrari. Mark Williams is a creator of the Netflix series Ozark, starring Jason Bateman. And Neil Jules is a longtime producer who's worked on a number of films, including with Martin Scorsese, The Irishman, Silence, and Killers of the Flower Moon. He was also involved in the Von Dutch fashion/apparel brand. They are joined by the CEO of Rhino Rugby, the kit and equipment manufacturer, Reg Clark, and a familiar face to many in Martin Ryan, who's a long-time associate supporter of the club. He was a director for many years under Peter Thomas and benefactor as well, put the not insignificant amount of money into the club. Steve, with your CF10 hat on, I don't. You have to make one of them now.
Yeah,
I don't know what that looks like.
the number of hats I should have for Cardiff Rugby Club is growing every day. But yeah.
You were part of a group that met with them last week. They sought you out for a meeting. Give us your thoughts on them and that meeting.
I think the first thing to say is, like, the headline is that these are Hollywood people. They want to make a TV show. That's obviously going to be the headline grabber. But I think it's worth dwelling on the rugby links within this group as well. Martin Ryan, number one, is unquestionably a Cardiff rugby man. Been involved for a long time, has invested over 1 million of his own money and wrote that off in the past. So he's committed to the club. So it's good that he's involved. Then Reg Clark, as you say, chief executive of Rhino Rugby for just about 20 years, has been involved with them for a long time before that. Has actually played at the Arms Park for Oxford University. So number one, he goes back a long way in the game, and if he is involved as part of an ownership group, those connections he's built up over those years are going to be immensely valuable. But also, during our meeting last week, and again in the Wales Online article, he's made a point of vouching for the Hollywood guys. And that feels very significant to me, because for a guy like this, who's basically his whole professional life revolves around rugby, if he vouches for someone and it turns into another health and it comes back to bite him on the arse, that will come around and bite him. So for him to make a point of vouching for them, to my mind, is very powerful and worth keeping in mind before you dive into the Hollywood stuff. So yeah, and also Niels Jewell, he's not only a Hollywood producer, he's got a background in fashion, the apparel industry. So, potentially we finally get some decent merch. And in our meeting, he talked about, some of the old jersey designs we got, which he thinks are fantastic. Generally speaking, speaking to them, what they have to say is very exciting. They want to base a TV show around the city and around the club, a scripted TV show, not a documentary. But that's only kind of part of it. They want to go big on women's rugby. They want to do a lot in terms of social media. What they're talking about is basically building the club up as a brand. And there's going to be an understandable amount of skepticism, because we've been promised a lot of things from in the past from people who said they had a lot of money. But my feeling from the meeting is that what they have, what I said in the meeting is the devil's in the detail, but so far the detail's pretty exciting. So there's a lot more to hear, but at the moment I think we can be tentatively excited. Yeah, and also, obviously I'm a rugby guy, but I'm also a big film guy. So the fact that Martin Scorsese's producer is involved is a bit of a rush, I can't lie.
We had a couple of questions come in ahead of recording. So Neil asks, do we know if the Hollywood hotshots, which I feel like we should probably not quite continually refer to them as that, but it's a good start. Do we know if the Hollywood hotshots are the best of the apparent 6 bidders? And also, do we know who any of the other bidders are?
So we can't go into the other bidders, no. It is obviously a good sign that there's more than one. What I think is probably very significant is, during the meeting, it was pretty clear that they are not necessarily big fans of the WRU's optimal solution in terms of the amount of control the WRU were asking for. That I would expect is likely to be a problem with anyone coming in to invest in any team. The idea that, okay, you put in all this money and we make all the rugby decisions, it's not going to go down well with many people, is it? But they are kind of opposed to that. They made that pretty clear. And I think that's something to bear in mind when it comes to thinking about the bidders and who the WRU might prefer, because they might prefer a bidder who is better for the WRU rather than a bidder who is better for Cardiff. That's something worth keeping in mind. But no, we don't know who the other bidders are, but I think we can see what's at stake.
And then the other question was from David, who said, with how public it's become, does it seem it's more or less a done deal, or is it still open to all?
No, it's not a done deal. Nothing's been decided. I think the fact that they've come out and made clear their interest means they're serious. I suppose the other thing to mention here is when Halford Capital were announced, the F10 basically from day one were trying to get a meeting with them, formal or informal, and we never got it. Halford Capital throughout their reign were pretty aloof, hard to pin down. These guys have already met formally and informally. When they went to the game on the weekend, they were like mixing with normal supporters in the stand and dodging fart bombs rather than just hanging out with executives. That, I mean, it's like saying they're already more visible than Halford Capital isn't saying much, but it is a very good sign.
Yeah, I think it's just worth re-emphasizing that the article with Steph and the interview there and stuff is all the consortium themselves. They've done it off their own
Yeah.
back. It's not with the club, it's not with the WRU, it's just
Yeah.
them putting their
The
name
club
out
haven't
there.
announced anything. The WRU haven't announced anything. This is these guys basically making it clear that they're serious.
Fraser, from a sort of general supporter point of view, do we have a lot of cautious optimism after what happened with Helford, or do we have to try and shake that and be excited about these things for the future of the club so that we don't just end up in WRU ownership forever?
Well, listening to Steve, I do feel I'm buzzing about this. I didn't really know much about it because I think until I get some like concrete ideas, I kind of avoid the kind of ownership chat because I mean, obviously, what happened with Halford was quite embarrassing, and obviously the House of Luxury thing that's going on. I don't want to like cast aspersions on them, but based on what I've seen of that situation, I'm not a big fan of that. So I think being cautious about it is really important. But like the fact that, like Steve just said, they've met with CF10, they're engaging with people, wanting to clearly invested in more than just making a quick buck or like some sort of like weird financial finagling that somehow rugby is profitable, which it just isn't. But I think we are in an unusual situation because Welsh rugby is in such a difficult place, so it is kind of hard to you want to be very cautious and like hold people to account, but then we also got to realize that how many cards do we have to play with? We're not a very viable business as someone to invest in, so it's kind of a tricky balance to take, I suppose. You want to make sure they are seriously interested, they want to do what's good for Cardiff, but then and the WRU, but it's kind of hard to hold people to account as much as you might like to because you don't know when these opportunities come up again. But I mean, having six bidders, that's a really good sign. So, obviously, I'd be really interested to hear more about them as well. And like, I hope the process and WRU are open-minded about all this stuff. And like Steve said, is that I hope they're not just about how much control we have over Cardiff and how much we can influence things, and also realize, like, think outside the box. If Hollywood producers want to make a TV show about Cardiff and Cardiff rugby, that's only going to benefit the WRU and rugby in Wales as a whole, and like especially American audiences. It'll just be that'll be a massive thing. So I'm getting excited thinking about it, but like I hope the WR can be open minded about that and yeah, think outside the box in terms of decision making. So yeah, I'm excited hearing from Steve, more excited, but yeah, obviously we need to temper it a little bit and wait and see what the other bidders say and what comes with it, really.
There's a couple of positives from what they said in the Wales Online bit as well. They don't seem to be mentioning the stadium, which was all Halford seemed to focus on. So to me, that gives them a bit more kudos because, like it felt very much, looking back on it now, like we should have been more wary because it felt like a land grab, right? Whereas hopefully this doesn't, and them coming out and speaking is trying to get on the good side of PR. What you mentioned about America, Fraser. If I'm Martin and I, the URC dude, I am on the phone to the WRU going, yes, please, because I want to break America. If I'm the URC, they've already said that about having games out there. Or how better to do it than to have one of your clubs having a scripted documentary about the city and the history of the club, but especially with the 150th year next year, and being the only club that's in the World Rugby Hall of Fame. Like, there's so many key selling points from a rugby perspective and from a city perspective. Like, you can talk about stuff like it expands out to like the multicultural nature of the bay and all bits and pieces. Like, you could sit for half an hour and go, 8 episodes, here you go, is eight things to talk about Cardiff, right? And you could probably get away with only having the rugby team in one of those episodes, because there's so much about the city. We're so lucky to have the, like, I'm going to wax lyrical about Cardiff. Like, how many cities in the world have hosted World Cups, European football finals, European rugby finals, Taylor Swift and massive concerts. You've got cricket, so Ashes and stuff like that. You've had Eisteddfods, you've had wrestling, you've had so many different things in this city that we are so lucky to be in and have. I think sometimes there's some fatigue as well about how lucky we are to be Cardiff and to be us. Like, and that seems very big-headed, but I think there's an element of forgetting how lucky we are for this city.
A couple of things to pick up on there.
Oh, I'm going to get told off now.
No, you're not going to get told off at all, actually, Tony. Something they actually did stress in the meeting was that they believed other bids were, in one way or another, revolving around the land, and the potential of getting involved in the stadium redevelopment, which would be potentially an exciting development in itself, but that's not their focus. And also, like, listening to Tony there, it's a reminder that feeling I had listening to them during the meeting last week was, this is so different to listening to Welsh people, because in Wales we tend to talk things down. A lot of people in Wales have a fatalistic nature. We talk things down. That is not really in the DNA of Hollywood executives. Okay, they talk things up, and when you start talking Cardiff up in the way that Tony just did, there is actually a lot to talk up as a club and as a city. I mean, if you think of the Wrexham example, the reason the Wrexham has worked so well is because they have authenticity by the bucket load, and that documentary focused in on that. Cardiff Rugby Club has an enormous authenticity. When you step back and look at what we've got, the history and the community links we've got, we are, maybe we're not in the golden age at the moment, but we are the real deal.
To paraphrase a quote you made earlier, we are massive. So
Absolutely.
I look forward to episodes on Ninja, Toy Mike Trev,
he's gone now.
And the Welcome to Cardiff guy. No, it all sounds incredibly exciting. Obviously, it's still a ongoing process. We wait to see, firstly, what the WRU are going to do at the end of this month, and then presumably in the months that follow, in the wranglings that come out of that decision. And yeah, we'll wait to see then which way the WRU go in terms of selling the club. I think the other thing about it is that it does feel quite positive in terms of Cardiff Rugby surviving whatever the WRU are doing with the professional game. That I thought that they would properly put this on ice until that had been decided, but it does seem like it is definitely moving at a decent pace still, and these guys have obviously received some level of assurance of Cardiff's future, that they are making the effort to come over to games and engage with supporters groups, and it also sets a bit of a template out for other bidders as well, who hopefully will properly engage with supporters groups ahead of time as well, because that's definitely the way to do it. Definitely 100% if you're going to make a good first impression. Right, we'll go on to Rags Corner then. Obviously, no game last weekend. There was a Wales under-20s training weekend, as it turned out, which is why there was a random break in the middle of the SRC season. They do return to action this weekend, though. They host Aberavon at home, 2:30 kickoff. Aberavon, who have played 4-1-2, lost 2 so far. Chris Davis there, the Cardiff University head of rugby, so a lot of ex-Cardiff Uni boys, a couple of ex-Rags and Academy guys down there as well. Cardiff hopefully will have a few players back who've been missing from the early part of the season. The Hud brothers, Alan Rees, all possibly in line to play. It remains to be seen whether we might see a couple of those first teamers back again. Obviously, Ed Byrne and Corey Domachowski were due to play against Ebbw Vale, but that game got postponed, so we might see one or two of them in action. There was also a suggestion that Halfpenny could play for them in that game as well. I don't know if that might rear its head again on the weekend, especially with the first team game not clashing with the Rags. Tony, the Rags have had a tough start to the season, I think it's fair to say. Obviously, winning isn't the be all and end all for them, but they do need to sort of pick up a result here and there, and they got 2 home games in a row now. Would be the ideal time to get that season going.
We talked earlier about the young lads that have come through and how easily they've settled into playing for the first team. And that's because the Rags have been successful. They've won games. So I think it is important that we start getting results. I have a feeling we always tend to be quite a slow start anyway. It's just we pick up results. But we haven't played well in the 3 games we've played. Ebbw was always going to be tough, especially missing the players that we were. It's really important we lay down a marker now, because I think Aberavon are 2 places above us. So we can make a decent jump up the table, especially with a game in hand. So yeah, I would be surprised if Halfpenny played, because we've got is it Crip that was lined up to play 15 against Ebbw before that was called off for not having posts. So I would expect him to play again, but yeah.
Is it Crimp, I think, with an N?
Crimp.
Yeah.
Crimp.
And the other piece of Rags news then is that they've announced a game against Pontypool a week Saturday will now kick off at the slightly later time of 4:25 p.m, which is a double header. We all love a double header, so that'll be linked up to the Edinburgh game, of course, for the first team later that evening, and it means that there's not a 4-hour delay where you're just sort of waiting around for the game. So that's positive one to come out of there. At this point of the pod then, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, please feel free to like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. If you're watching us on YouTube, like the video and subscribe to the channel, as well as the Global Gainline channel, where all of the other pods in the Rap family go out. Season's probably back underway now as pods going out left, right and centre. We'll finish our pod this week with a look ahead to Cardiff's game on Friday night. It's the first Welsh derby of the season for the Blue and Blacks, who make the short trip over to Rodney Parade for a 7:45 kickoff on Friday evening. Dragons struggling once again, drawn 1, lost 2 so far this season, including a 49-0 defeat against Glasgow on the weekend, although it was a much changed side that went up to Scotland. There was some pre-season hopes that they might be a bit better with a more settled coaching staff and a number of additions, including about half of the Cardiff squad from last season, but hasn't quite worked out so far, where they should have beaten the Sharks at home but just couldn't quite get over the line, and then the 2 heavy losses. Cardiff, of course, on a lengthy run. It's coming up to just over 10 years now since we last lost against the Dragons in that European quarter-final game, where, as we were mentioning off air, there was Tavis Noyle in the centre and all sorts of shenanigans going on. But we're 19 in a row in all competitions, 20 in a row in the league now. Fraser, with this game, is there a sort of part of us that thinks we actually do need the Dragons to get good to make this like a proper rivalry again, or are we happy just battering them every season?
I mean, no, it's always nice to batter a team, so I know, especially Dragons. I mean, to be fair, the ones I've gone to, they've been kind of close. I mean, obviously there were some of them that we've just steamrolled them. I think Arms a couple of years ago we absolutely battered them, but they can be they've been a couple of scores in it. It's been pretty spicy. Regardless of Dragons being shit or not, because obviously they're shit basically every year, but they do. There is still that needle, and there's always a little scrap. There's always like some issue going on between the players. So I think I still enjoy them, and obviously if we keep winning them, I'll be delighted. But it would be nice if Dragons did get a little bit better, just to add a bit of jeopardy to the match. But I mean, I don't really care that much about it. And to me, I thought Dragons were looking a bit better this season, but after that Glasgow result, that's pretty damning. I know Glasgow are good, and obviously, were the champions last year, a couple of years ago. But anyway, hard result, but to get nilled in that fashion is pretty shocking and kind of indicates have they really progressed much at all after kind of a good show against the Sharks. Obviously, they didn't win it, but got a draw and then not too bad against Ulster, but pretty heavy defeat. So, I mean, I want to pretend that I'd be happy with a tight game and Dragons getting better, but I'd be delighted if we just batter them again on this weekend. So, either way, I'm happy basically.
Steve, to list the sort of ex-Cardiff players in the squad, they've added Dylan Lewis. They already had Matthew Screech. They've added Seb Davis. Mackenzie Martin is on loan from us. We don't know if that means he can play or not. I think the expectation is he is available to them, but whether he actually makes the team or not is then another question. They've got Thomas Young, Harry Beddle, Shane Lewis-Hughes, Tina Stabia, of course, a fly half now as well. Is them having so many ex-Cardiff players a help or a hindrance to this derby?
Putting the rags in drags, aren't they? I mean, it's hard to tell because I mean it's wrapped up in the psychology of the Dragons for this game anyway, because I'm sure the Cardiff players, ex-Cardiff players involved, would want to put one over on us. But that could easily go the other way, and they become demoralised if they go a score or two down. And I think that'll go for the whole of the Dragons team, where they are absolutely from the first minute going to throw the kitchen sink, the dishwasher, the rest of the kitchen at this. They'll be desperate to win this game. But because they've got such a losing run against us, and also generally, they go a couple of scores down, then their heads will absolutely drop. So, yeah, it could turn into a big plus for them, but I don't know if it's a policy to keep signing ex-Cardiff players, but if it is a policy, it could easily just kind of come back to bite them as well. But yeah, it's definitely a banana skin because we have whooped them a couple of times, but generally these are close games, and it probably will be on Friday.
Tony, from a Cardiff perspective, obviously derbies are games you want to win all the time, but in terms of the context of this first block for us, if Cardiff were to win on Friday, does that make it a successful first block no matter what happens then against Edinburgh the week after, where we're sort of looking at least 15 points from the opening 5 games?
I guess on paper, yes, but win your home games, beat the Dragons is a general good rule of thumb. Haven't we won a home league game at Dave Parade more recently than the Dragons have, by the way?
Quite possible, I think.
Because we played there during COVID. That just popped into my head then. But yeah, like it'll be positive, but I don't want to lose against the Dragons because they are the little brother in air quotes. So we need to keep them in their place. And it is what it is, right? Like if you wanna get in the playoffs, you've got to beat the teams who are going to be propping up the table. And that is the Dragons and likely the Lions. We've already beaten the Lions, we've got 5 points against them. A Zebra is one of those, but obviously they're in a purple patch. Dragons are going to come out all firing, like Steve said. So got to be switched on from the start, 10, 15 minutes. Keep that scoreboard ticking over. So it's really important that Ben Thomas comes in and kicks well. We take every opportunity to score points every time we get them. And that's how you break them. And then once you've broken them, that's when you put your foot on your throat and you keep it there. They're going to have another purple patch at some other point in the game. But you just need to make sure that in that key first 20, 30 minutes, you've got that scoreboard ticking enough that when they do have a purple patch and they come back into it, and we're bound to have a yellow card, at some point that doesn't punish us and make us chase the game even more. I think the ref we've got on the weekend is the one who was the Lions game last year that we won 20 points to 17 and was basically trying to play until the Lions scored. So it being disciplined against them, because they, like Shane Lewis-Hughes and Seb Davis, they are bound to do something. Seb Davis is a walking yellow card, right? So we cannot let them drag us into the type of game they want to play. We want to play how we want to play, and just that's it, right? Just I don't know how else to say it.
I was listening to the Dragon's Lair pod of the Rat family and doing some opposition research, and they were obviously desperate to win this game as their biggest game of the season. They mentioned something interesting though, which I didn't put on the running order, but just as a quick question to ask each of you. Their feeling was that we are, as Cardiff fans, we didn't care about this game at all. Like, we don't see Dragons as our biggest rivals at all, and we're sort of saying that they think 99% of us would see Ospreys as our biggest rivals. Fraser, who do you think our biggest rivals are?
I'd say dragons. Yeah, I like going to the dragon. I know there's a lot of criticisms how exciting they are. There is always a need on. There's a bit of heat between the teams. I think dragons, for me anyway, that would be a bigger game than Ospreys or Scarlets in terms of It's a derby. Yeah, dragons.
That's what I do think it might be different for each person. Steve, who do you think?
Toulouse. I think they've currently got the crown of the biggest team in Europe, but they've only got it temporarily. All the Turks, but that goes without saying.
Tony?
It's the Dragons because they're so close. Maybe on-field result-wise, it's the Ospreys, and they were the team that we were chasing for so long because they were higher up than us. But it's like I called them earlier. They're the little brother. They are the Everton to our Liverpool, Tottenham to our Arsenal. That's how I see it.
Are they not more like Barnet to our Arsenal?
Probably a better one. But
I should probably not be tempting fate here.
No, I know, and I've resisted everything online again from making any comment about how badly they looked against Glasgow after the first 5 or 6 minutes, because I know that it's a potential banana slip. But I'm not on the pod next week, so I don't have to justify anything next week, so it's fine.
Yeah, I found that interesting that they thought it was 99% Ospreys, because obviously, like Tony said, they have been our closest on-field rival, I think. But for me personally, personal circumstance dictates this, the Turks. But
I think of all the Welsh teams, the Ospreys fans are the ones most obsessed with us. So you can easily sort of mix that up in your head and think that it's a rivalry, but I don't think that's a real rivalry myself.
But that's why I don't count them as our rivals, because they are more interested in us than we are in them. Whereas exactly. I just want to keep kicking the Dragons when they're down.
And as much as Dragons were they continue to try and say that they're not, there is also the historic Cardiff Newport element of that as well. I mean, they are Newport in all but name, as they increasingly just wear Newport colours every season now. And
Cardiff ones.
Yeah, well, yeah, that as well. Right, let's get into some team news then. So what do we know definitely? Teddy Williams obviously out. Rory Jennings was mentioned as having quite a significant injury in the pre-match stuff by Cornel van Zyl as well. A little watch back of that passage of play right at the end of the Munster game suggests that in the big carry that he did prior to Tom Bowen's hat-trick try, he had quite an awkward landing, and it looks like his knee went the wrong way comparatively to the rest of his body. So if it is as bad as it looked, it could be another season ender if it's like an ACL tear or something along those lines. Mason Grady still out, James Botham still out. Theo Cabango and Ewan Stevens have been appearing a bit more in training videos over the last week or so, but I think rehab-wise, it's sort of dangerous to say that they're back and ready to go. I wonder if they both might be candidates to play for the Rags at some point to get some minutes back in their legs. And then with the experienced Wales international three of Josh Adams, Tulupe Faletau and Lee Halfpenny, We're not too sure again what happens with them. Josh Adams was just listed as a knock. I saw some suggestion that it was a head knock, but I like there was just people talking about that. I hadn't actually seen anywhere confirm that. Which, if is the case, he could be available for Friday, but won't have trained a huge amount. Faletau has this calf issue, which he seems to be doing some running in training, but I suspect Faletau is just a case of you tell us when you're ready rather than us telling you when you're ready. And then Halfpenny is also coming back from a calf issue, but obviously balancing coaching and play, and we're not too sure when or if we might see him. So I think we'll be on the safe side and rule the majority of them out for now. We're going to start with the front row as usual. Fraser, quite a lot of players available now all of a sudden in the front row. We've got Byrne and Domachowski back on the loose head side with the incumbents Southworth and Barrett. There's a question of whether Evan Lloyd comes back in with Hughes and Belcher being the hookers for the last 2 weeks. And then Azarati, Sebastian and Wainwright on the tight head side. What are you going for as just starting three at Rodney Parade?
I'd probably stick with it was like Azarati, Belcher and Southworth, right, who started against who started last week. So I'd probably stick with them because I thought I was really impressed by the scrum. I thought we did really well. We had the upper hand against Connacht, and and then when Jav and Sebastian came on and Reece Barrett, it was fine. David Hughes played well. So yeah, I'd stick with the same starting lineup: Azarati, Belcher, Southworth. I think they played well. They deserve to stay on.
Tony, second row wise, you mentioned the Mulvihill rule earlier. Is that being invoked with not coming in to replace Teddy?
Mulvihill rule always. I think that is just the thing, right? Like, I know we mentioned Ben Donnell earlier. I just thinking about what I mentioned with where they're going to fly out the blocks early. I want a proper second row there. They're going to try and get at us. I want a proper second row in there. We can always shift stuff around if things are going on, but just carry and shift. So.
Steve,
do I need to say who you want it in the other second row?
No, I've written McNally in.
Okay, that's fine.
Steve, the back row then, obviously Alex Mann didn't play last week, but he was out doing the warm-up as a travelling reserve, so we assume that's just, I wonder if that's like a WRU invoked Team Wales rest week potentially involved there, or whether we just decided he needed a week off. And then the other question in the back row is Basham also under the Mulvihill rule? Dan Thomas was excellent last week, but they might have kept Basham for this one potentially.
I think that's probably the policy. Yeah, I think you absolutely go Mulvihill rule with Basham. Not just an ex-Dragons player, but an ex-Dragons favourite. It's the sort of situation where people tend to have a blinder, so you absolutely play him. Alex Mann, it's a Welsh derby. You bring on the master of shithousery. Definitely comes in at 6. If Faletau is available, then obviously that's a no-brainer. Otherwise, Alan Lawrence is once again on a roll, and I doubt any of us would have a problem with him starting at 8 again.
Van Ziel's, I saw some comments from him about how if Wales were to pick Faletau and he hadn't played any minutes, then he's the sort of player that would be good to go. And I just read that as he ain't ready yet. But Alex Mann, the shithousery, is exactly what I mean with Seb Davis and Shane Lewis-Hughes as well. You just have Alex Mann, just every ruck or maul, just needle Seb and Shane Lewis-Hughes, and just wait until they're at that level where they do something stupid, which is what every team did to us when they were in our teams.
I think McNally's going to have a job on his hands just keeping Mann and Tane Basham not getting yellow cards. Like, whoa, no, stop. Yeah.
He comes out with them on like a proper leash on each side. Like.
There.
Yeah. Steve, is there obviously, like you said, Lawrence is on an unbelievable run. I think his stats from last week were 25 tackles, 22 carries, which, I mean, that's an unbelievable stat line. He did, though, go down with like some sort of hamstring cramp and stuff during the second half. Is there any sort of suggestion, maybe on a 6-day turnaround, that Basham goes in at 8 if Faletau's not available, with Thomas staying at 7, just to give Lawrence like some sort of chance to rest his legs? Or do you think he's the sort of player who can just go week after week?
He's the sort of player I back to go week after week, actually. And I think, you know, compared to other teams in the league, we probably still do lack carriers, and he offers that. And it's the kind of game where having as many carriers available could be really handy. I think it will be an attritional game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. So yeah, I would given the choice, I'd play him this week rather than next week if he needs a rest. And seeing the way he's performed over the past season or so, I don't think he needs a rest. I think he's the sort of player who flourishes on playing every week.
Fraser, then, I sort of Mulder and Sheedy I've got remaining at 9 and 10, like pretty settled there. Into the centres though, I don't think there'll be much argument that Ben Thomas comes back in at 12. I wonder though at 13, we know that Millard was sort of touch and go prior to the game on Saturday, having been absolutely munched at Munster. He still played very well, but I fancied that he looked like he was struggling a little bit in the last few minutes of the game. Is there an argument that with a full week's training, one of the new boys does come in at 13 for this one?
I'd probably still stick with Millard if he's all right. If he's like, if he's honest with the medical staff and he can get through the game, and it's not going to be like detrimental to his long-term fitness. I guess that's the thing, is like planning for the season. Millard's definitely R13, right? We want him to remain as fit as possible for as many games as possible. So if there's genuine a risk as to his injury, then yeah, I wouldn't mind. I mean, maybe Will Rigg coming in. He seems a more experienced player, but I think if Millard's saying doing all the right things, showing the staff that he's fit and he's going to be fine moving forward. I think Millard's been like standout player this season so far. He stepped in last season at 13, and then this season he's been just given that mantle. It's like, yeah, you're now R13, and he's really stepped up. And I've been really impressed defensively, attacking. He's just been brilliant. So I think he's a crucial player. So I'd stick with Harry Millard if he's fit. Yeah.
My only question is similarly to Alan Lawrence, right? Like, he's played a lot of rugby. He looked broken. He looked broken after the game. Do we slot someone else in because we need to make sure we win our home games as well? That would be my only question is do we give him a week so he's firing for the Edinburgh game? But I'm often swung easily, so just a thought.
I think, because I mean, we've talked briefly about the new centres, but I think Will Rigg is potentially a really exciting signing, because if you look at what Exeter fans have to say about him, I don't know whether
they were furious, weren't
they? They're really unhappy about him going out on loan. He seems to be really well regarded over the bridge, and also if you look at the type of player he is, he gives us potentially something we don't have at the moment, which is a guy in the three-quarter line who is powerful, and if we need to, we can just send him up straight and scatter bodies, which only Mason Grady's really the only player we have in the back line who can do that. And of course we know his injury problems, and I think I'd like to see Will Rigg definitely in the 23. I mean, I'm going to assume that a week is long enough to get him up to speed. I'm not sure if it will be, but for argument's sake, let's say it is. So I'd like him to be either on the bench or potentially starting. But with 13, it may also depend on how fit Josh Adams is. I mean, if he can come back in on the wing, I kind of wouldn't mind seeing Beetham playing 13. But then I don't know how fit Josh Adams is. For argument's sake, maybe we should rule him out.
Yeah, and Tony, coming to the wing spot then, and maybe linking in with that 13 argument a little bit, is if Adams is ruled out, and I think we probably do, just on the basis that we haven't heard anything definite from him. I'll go and stand on the cycle path down here in Llethe and see if I can spot him occasionally. But if Adams isn't available, Beetham, as we mentioned, had a good game, but is not a winger. Could you put Halfpenny out there if he's fit? Is a potential option A, or if we do have Rig at 13 and Millard is still available, could we push Millard out to the wing potentially and play him out wide?
Yeah, I'd probably be more comfortable with Millard pushing out one than I would playing Beetham. Beetham was good, but weirdly felt like he wasn't that great under the high ball, but that might just have been the vantage point I had. It felt very much like he was knocking loads of stuff backwards rather than trying to make catches. But like I said, I was in an unusual position of being on the North Terrace, so that might have affected my eyesight a little bit.
He seemed
Um,
to jump. He seemed to get to the balls and just like compete very well, but not retain possession. So you're right. It was a bit like
yeah,
messy. He was in the air, like getting
yeah,
the ball a little bit, but yeah, he wasn't retaining it. So you're right there.
it's an interesting one, isn't it? Like because he's meant to be a fullback, so you think he'd be good at that stuff. Um, I guess the other option might be Halfpenny at fullback and win it on a wing. Um, but but that is probably just one of those old. It, you've just put different shirts on people, but they essentially do the same thing in attacking and defensive structure. So, as in they switch around. Um, um, I would probably be more comfortable with Millard out there, especially if we've got a rig at outside centre, because Millard can help run that defensive line and keep that shape in place.
Right, we're going to a vote then because I have no idea what we've just decided there. So Fraser, who are you starting at 13 and 14? What's your
I think I'm going Harry Millard Beetham. To be honest, I'm sticking with what it was. I mean, very yeah, yeah,
Steve?
Assuming Adams is out, then let's stick with Millard and Beetham. Sorry, Harry, you're gonna need more ice. But definitely will rig on the bench.
And Tony?
I'm going Rig and Millard. Millard plays any way which way balloons spell a little bit,
yeah.
but it just depends on where. Maybe it protects him a bit if he's on a wing.
I would go Millard and Beetham as well. I think I on in possession, I really like the idea of Millard on the wing. I worry though with a Millard win it Bowen back three, it's just too small potentially. And although I agree, Beetham spilled a few. I do think there's also an element that like he needs to keep playing no matter what
Yeah,
position
yeah.
he's in. Like
It's good to see him getting a run of games, isn't it?
yeah, and I think there's him getting more confident in the high ball will come as he plays week in week out. So we'll go Millard Beetham then and win it at full back bench. Then. I think Evan Lloyd probably does come back on to the replacement hooker for this one.
Yeah.
It's the last audition before Tandy names his first Wales squad next Tuesday. So you'd probably like to think that he would be involved in that. I don't know. Anybody have any objection to Barrett staying as replacement loosehead? He seems to have done quite well. Um, Fraser, no objection for you. Anything from Steve and Tony? Is there anything that says get Burns' experience back in for this one?
To see the
Um,
game out, maybe.
yeah, I mean, it'd be easier to say let's bring Burn in if he'd had a game.
Yeah.
He's been out for quite
Yeah.
a while now, so it's hard to say. It might be a bit risky putting him straight in, but I've no doubts about Barrett or Southworth.
Let's stick with
Barrett's look really good.
Yeah.
Like there's no noticeable drop off at the scrum when he comes on, which is not something we've been able to say about props coming on for the last few years.
let's stick with Barrett and Sebastian then as backups there. I'm going to say Donnell and Dan Thomas as the replacement forwards there, and then Ali Davis remains as the Davis and Lloyd as the backup halfbacks with Rig as the outside centre. I
I
don't
think
I
so.
don't think there's much other option potentially. Although Tony, you're looking a bit confused.
I'm just wondering where Bevan is because he featured quite heavily in the preseason, and then we've not seen him at all, have we?
I
He
mean,
was travelling reserve on the weekend, so he is fit. But no, we haven't seen him in a match day action.
He looked quite
potential
sharp in
14
preseason.
option.
Not the 14 option.
I I
Hey,
mean,
Gatland thought so.
I suggested he covered wing from the bench last week, so uh,
Yeah, I do wonder whether we might see him at some point, but Davis has been quite good in that role off the
yeah.
bench. So I
Yeah.
would say is that he's brought a good level of control there. So yeah, it's one of those ones. I think with the halfback combination of Mulder Sheedy starting and Davis Lloyd coming on, it doesn't feel like needs tinkering with at the moment necessarily.
So we skipped over halfbacks, but with it being likely an attritional game, like Steve was saying, is there a possibility Davis starts ahead of Mulder to put us in the right positions?
I mean, I'd be open to that sort of argument. I don't know, Fraser, anything from you?
I'm not going to
I
argue it.
d-
It was just a statement.
I'd say I think Mulder's his kicking's got better as I don't know, I've been more impressed with his kicking than when he first joined. And again, he's just such a good in so many
Yeah.
different facets of the game. Is like his work at the ruck is really impressive. His tackling's good. Yeah, defensively he's pretty solid. I think it'd be hard. I hear what you're saying though. Davis has got like this strategic, tactical kind of kicking and put us in the right areas. But I think Mulder brings so much more across the field, and he's been so good. Like it's hard to take him out of the team. I think.
I think the hope has to be that we build up a bit of a score, and then Davis can come on and help see it out and use his experience there. But yeah, Mulder has been a bit of a success story, hasn't he? And he's definitely building up a nice partnership with Sheedy. So yeah, I think go with continuity.
So
Hopefully, we
I
can
like
get
what
a
you.
renewal announcement soon.
Mm.
Wow. Yeah, I like what you've done though, Tony, by mentioning that, because if it is then Davis starting, we can claim that we also predicted that. It's very good podcasting. Very good. So just to run through what we selected then from 1 to 15, we're going with Southworth, Belcher, and Azarati in the front row, McNally and Knott in the second row, Mann, Basham, and Lawrence in the back row, Mulder and Sheedy at half-back, Thomas and Millard in the centres, and then Bowen, Beetham, and Winnett in the back three. The bench of Lloyd, Barrett, Sebastian, Donnell, Dan Thomas, Ali Davis, Johan Lloyd, and Will Rigg. A team, Fraser, I think that can get the job done on Friday. I don't think there's much doubt about that. But do we think it could be a statement victory from that team?
I think so. I mean, there's definitely that possibility if we're on it. I think we could tear Dragons to pieces. But I mean, I'm still, have Dragon. Oh, and obviously Glasgow indicates they haven't turned a corner. But are they putting a bit more of a fight? They've got more depth in their squad, a bit bigger, might be a bit more, attritional, like intense up front. So they might hold us back a bit, and it might be another scrappy win, which it does kind of tend to be. But I think it'd be great if we could get the bonus points. I think these are the type of games you would highlight on the calendar. 5 points. This is one of them. Even if it's away at Rodney Parade, you'd still you'd highlight it and prioritize it. So I think the team will be up for it. And yeah, I'd like to think we can do it.
Tony, on the Dragons Lair pod, they felt that they could get the upper hand in the pack. They thought they might have a bit of an edge there, sort of head to head on paper, with sort of guys like Seb coming in there. Thomas Young might be fit this weekend. Obviously, Wainwright's continually in great form, no matter how the Dragons are playing. Is that a concern for us, or do we think we can even them out there?
Our pack started really well this year, both at scrum and at maul. The lineups have been a bit hit and miss, but I guess Munster it was pretty bad, but we can chalk that off to Storm Amy a bit. But we're I think last weekend showed we're a bit of a hard-nosed team up front. Teddy will be a big miss, and maybe that's where they can get an edge. But Alex Mann versus Tom Young will be a super battle, and it'll be if there are any kids or anyone going to watch, just watch those two get around the park, and just if you want to improve your game, just watch what those two do, because that'll be a supreme battle. Still fancy us on paper over their pack, yeah, because Seb's a walking yellow card.
Steve, obviously, Tony mentioned there that Storm Amy had an impact at Munster. Do you have a crap weather forecast for us? That's definitely not
Now you
gonna
mention it,
happen.
I can very quickly get the Met Office app open.
Well,
I'll stick my head out the window and judge the cloud formations to say nice. Again, I went with nice on Saturday. It was nice. Got a bit cold in the second half, so I apologise if you didn't bring a coat on the back of my weather forecast.
Okay, so
But what's the Met Office falsely
according
saying?
to the Met Office app, Friday's going to be fairly warm in Newport. It's going to be 16 degrees during the day, still 13 degrees when it comes to 7 o'clock, and cloudy but dry. 5% chance of rain, so it's going to be a dry evening. Lots of open, attacking, sexy rugby, and hopefully a lot less kicking than last week. And whatever the Drags podcast says, there's no way they have a better pack than us on paper, even without Teddy.
Hopefully, it's
do you
not
think-
mild enough so Newport people have to get their ankles out. You don't want to see Newport people in shorts. That's definitely the case. Go on, Tom.
I was going to ask, do you think the Dragons are furious at this kickoff time, by the way? Because again, 7:45 on a Friday night, are like there's a group of Cardiff fans that I know that travel down to Dragons games for the like our derby, and I know a chunk of them aren't going because of when it is. Like I can't go because of rugby commitments. My kids training. But this would be a sellout game for them on a Saturday. But chucking it on a Friday night that late as well. I just wonder whether.
I mean, I know that I do enjoy the trip to Rodney Parade, but I can't make it on a Friday even. It's just too much of a slog for myself, and I suspect there'll be particularly the fact that I think it's on S4C as well. This one,
It is,
which
yeah.
will put people off with it being free to air. I don't ever recall a Friday night derby in the last couple of years, certainly since COVID. Off the top of my head, I know there's been a couple of late Saturday ones which caused an issue because trains don't seem to run past 9 o'clock, but. I have a feeling the majority of the derbies last year were obviously, with the exception of bank holidays like Boxing Day, New Year's Day and stuff, were Saturdays at like 5 o'clock-ish seemed to be the derby time. So yeah, Dragons must have a hit on tickets there. I'd certainly be disappointed if this was the home game and that we were hosting them on the Friday night. But yeah, it is what it is. Any other business from anybody? Nope, all good. Well, gents, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you to you at home for listening as well. We'll be back next week, hopefully making it somewhere between 20 and 21 in a row, depending on which stats you're looking at. And we'll look ahead to that last game of the block against Edinburgh, as well as react to Steve Tandy's first Wales squad. But until then, enjoy the rugby, and we'll see you next week.